Value is in the eye of the buyer. In this case, those people that you're talking to on a day-to-day basis, they don't want to buy what you are selling. They want to buy something that's going to solve a problem for them. And on today's episode, we're going to teach you a simple exercise, a simple idea that you can take advantage of that can help you to figure out what exactly is of value to your buyers. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode on TSE TV here on YouTube, we have David Primer. And if you haven't heard of David Primer, you're going to love him. He has some great stuff. He has an awesome book. It brings a really interesting mix to sales enablement and to sales in general, because David comes from a background where he not only provides content and information in the academic world, but also he brings information from real life experiences and practices. So he's going to break it down. He's going to give you some ideas on how you can figure out what is of value to your buyer. Anyways, I won't take much more time. Let's go ahead and dive into the episode. Welcome to the show, David.
Oh, pleasure to join you, Donald. Thanks for having me.
Of course. It's always great to have a fellow Canadian. Well, I'm not even Canadian, but I'm just going to... Let's back this up. My dad's, my aunt and uncle actually live in the great country of the North, Canada. So I guess I have some kind of lineage there. So I will say a fellow Canadian in that sense, even though I've never stepped foot on Canadian soil yet.
You should. It's a beautiful place, by all means, anytime.
You guys are too nice. No pun intended.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, David, man, we bragged about you a little bit there in the introduction, and I've been telling people about your book, which I absolutely love, and I highly recommend folks go check it out. You should all find it. We're going to have a link down below. If you're watching this on TSE TV, you'll see it down below, as well as on the podcast. Just look ahead in the show notes. But it's Sell the Way You Buy. But before we dive into all this fun stuff, and we have some stuff earmarked here, David, I want to get from you. Tell us a little bit more about you and what you do, man.
Yeah, well, like I was saying before, I'm kind of like the Bob Ross of sales. I'm a happy accident, just like everyone. No one becomes an accountant or a doctor by accident, but everyone gets into sales by accident. I'm no different. I started my career as a research scientist over 20 years ago, ended up getting into sales at the turn of the dot-com boom. And then over the course of the next 20 years, I spent my time across four awesome B2B technology startups. Three ended up getting acquired. The last one's still kicking. The third one, which I helped start, was acquired by Salesforce. And I came over with the ship, spent 5 awesome years at Salesforce, seeing kind of how the sales machine was built, operationally and culturally. But after all this time, I realized, this really just simple truth that people love to buy stuff, but they just don't like talking to salespeople. So my mission was to kind of combine the experience, my history as a research scientist, with my curiosity-based approach to selling, and help make sales better for everyone. So that's what I do today.
Well, awesome. And we're gonna come back to that and talk a little bit more about your scientist experience. But let's go dive into that comment you made about the whole idea. I mean, it ties back to the premise behind the book. Like, people love to buy, but we just don't like talking to salespeople. Just why we love Amazon. It's great, except for that, Amazon has their invisible salespeople, those robots that track us around online. Besides that, we're fine with it. But why? Why write the book right now at this time? I mean, don't you think that horse has been beaten dead a couple times on this topic?
No, I don't. Well, look, the reality is that unlike other professions, if you like medicine and academia, like these things, they change, but they change, over time slowly, and they're more or less consistent on both sides. Meaning, like, the medical profession is more or less consistent, patients are more or less consistent. But in the world of modern selling, the world of buying has changed so quickly and so dramatically over the last, never mind 20 years, let's talk about 5-10 years, right? People buy a lot differently. The number of solutions in the market in any one particular area are just absolutely skyrocketing because the barrier of entry is so low now. Yeah. And at the same time, with the advent of social, people just don't have like the mental cycles and bandwidth to care about everything equally. And so you kind of smush all this in a blender, and you bring in salespeople who are still executing the tactics that they thought worked 10, 20 years ago. And that's a recipe for disaster, right? And so in a world where buyers are more peer-driven, skeptical, information-rich, and they kind of feel like they don't need to talk to salespeople anymore, this is where salespeople really need to step up and arm themselves with new modern tactics to connect with buyers.
All right, we talk about some of those old tactics. I'm curious, what are some of those things you're seeing that people are doing that maybe should be left back with the afro and bell bottom? What are some of those? Nothing against the afro, I just cut
No, no,
a
no,
little
not
hair
at all.
post COVID. But what are some of those things that you're seeing that we should leave in the past?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest kind of offensive category of tactics that needs to go away, I refer to as closing tactics. And if you think about a closing tactic, I'll give you like a sleazy, horrible kind of car salesman example. Where
Yeah.
let's say you're checking out a car, you're kicking the tires, you went for a test drive, and then the salesperson says, "So Donald, do you think there's any reason why we wouldn't be able to move forward with you sitting in this car and driving it off the lot today, right? Do you think there's any reason why?" Or even I'll give you like a much simpler, less offensive, but equally challenging situation. You walk into a clothing store and you're kind of just thumbing through some merchandise, and a salesperson comes over and says, "Excuse me, sir, can I help you find something?" Right? What do you say?
I'm good. I'm good.
You
Thanks.
say, "I'm good. I'm just looking. I don't need help." Right?
Yeah.
Because what you're worried about is if I say yes, you're worried about what have I given this person permission to do? Right?
Yeah.
And it's the same way, like we're always fearful of what we've committed to. It's the same way when a seller says, "Is there any reason why you wouldn't be able to buy this product today?" They're trying to corner you. They're trying to close you. They're trying to kind of remove your freedom. And when people's freedom is removed, they lash out, right? And this is like a scientifically proven principle. And yet we tell salespeople to kind of cut down all the angles and try to push people into making a decision.
So this is, again, let's say a B2B sales rep sending out an email to the customer. How do you perceive that being portrayed in an email, like say a cold outreach? Because you get a lot of these yourself as a business owner, and as a team leader, you probably got a slew of these messages, right?
Don't get me started, Donald, on email outreach.
He's gonna pull up his Dropbox now with the emails.
You're gonna see. I wrote a post a few weeks ago on my blog. It was called. So here's the problem. I get all of these outreaches, as you probably do, from salespeople.
Yeah.
And let's even forget the point where they're trying to close me on the call. Let's just talk about the factual information contained in that email. I read these emails and I almost say to myself, I'm scratching my head, does this person even know what I do? Because if you went onto my LinkedIn profile, which is where you're reaching out to me on, and you read anything, you would know that I don't run a call center. I don't hire accountants. You know that I don't have a software product. I'm not in SaaS anymore. Like, you would know these things, and it's immediately off-putting. Like, you're immediately at a disadvantage, even more so than if it was a generic, "Hey, David, I work with people like you" kind of emails.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing I say is just do your homework. So I wrote this article. I try not to berate people or kind of come down hard. I try to persuade. So I wrote this article, here's 3 reasons, science-based reasons why it pays to do your homework. Do your homework first and foremost.
Yeah.
But so that's probably as big an offense as people are committing, because we're talking about, you mentioned earlier, personalization.
Yes.
Like, people are conditioned to respond to personalization, and there's a ton of reciprocity. This is a scientific principle that when you put in effort into your outreach, and I read it and I say, "Oh my gosh, Donald, he looked at my profile, he read my article, he's checked out my book." He's like, I almost feel indebted to get back to you, even if I don't want to buy your product, right? So these are the kinds of things that, like, just do your homework. But back to email, you said, like, what are some of these offensive tactics? I mean, even something simple like, if I said, "Hey, Donald, I'm a sales trainer and I work with people like you all the time. Do you have, we should set aside 15 minutes to chat. How's Wednesday at 2 p.m.?" I'm like, that's really presumptuous, right? And a lot of people do that because they think that, hey, look, I'm making it easy for the person to just say yes, and then the invite will then come. But what you're really doing is you're making me feel boxed in.
Yes. We had a situation like that with a consumer product the other day, and we're painting our office, and we had some guys come by, and I know the stuff, right? Even with the sales stuff, and it was referred by a friend, and next thing you know, the strategy was he had 2 individuals, with him and somebody else, and I had my wife and I with me, and the pressure that it was created in the scenario, and then when the price was then shared, it was then like, okay, are you going to go forward now or not? You have to like say, oh, dude, those back up. But you feel that. And even if myself, could be vulnerable to something to that aspect, and we work with people all the time, imagine as somebody who is not there and just how off-putting that would go. If this guy wasn't referred by someone, I would have probably not continued the dialogue or continued the relationship, but it was referred, and we were able to smooth it out. And I realized that if this guy used them and liked them, then therefore there's something good. And yeah, anyways, let's hope. They're working on the office as we speak, so let's
Oh, that's good. But no, you said something really important though, is this idea that it's immediately off-putting. Like when you have someone who approaches you like this, and I talk about this all the time. I don't know if you have kids, Donald.
We have one, 10 months.
Okay, so your kid is not yet at the point where they're asking you for permission to do things like like, can I download this app? Can I get a lift to the mall? Can I have a cookie? But, so I have 3 kids. My kids are 14, 12, and 8. And
Congrats.
what happens is, thank you. I have three daughters, so I'm going to be well taken care of in my old age. That's the good news. But when my kids come to me and they're about to hit me up for something, it doesn't matter which one it is, right? Like I want to lift to the mall, or I want to download this app, or can I have I can tell immediately. And those of you who are listening, if you have kids, when the kids approach you, you can tell immediately they're going to hit you up for something. And it always puts me in a defensive mood. I'm like, the answer is no. Whatever it is, the answer is no. What do you want, right?
Yeah.
And so I always start from this position of defense. And it's the same thing when you're reaching out to someone in a sales interaction. If you put like any undue pressure on them, if you're delivering a pitch that sounds like you're reading it from a script, you get probably calls from telemarketers all the time.
Always.
I do. And then how long does it take you to tell? When you get a call from a telemarketer, you say hello. Unfortunately, you answer the phone. You say hello. How long does it take you to tell that they're a telemarketer reading from a script?
5 to 7 seconds.
Yeah, like it's super fast, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing for salespeople. We go out and God bless product marketing. We get the product marketing deck and the slides and the content. We go and we read this stuff, and it's immediately off-putting for people because people are perceptive. People can feel when they're about to be pitched.
So it comes back. I mean, you're a scientist by trade, and I'm setting that up because I really want us to go into some of these points as we're going to talk about what can we do, how can we sell the way we buy, and pull some stuff from your book. But you're a scientist by trade, so can you explain that to a listener who's listening to this? Why you come at this with a whole curiosity aspect?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest challenges in modern selling is what I refer to as unconscious selling. And what that refers to is people who are going out and executing all sorts of sales tactics because someone told them to. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. We were talking off air. I refer to this as the Cobra Kai principle for those of you who are unfamiliar. But the Cobra Kai is a Karate Kid reference, and it just speaks to this idea that we just learn from our sensei, whoever it is that taught us. Right? And it's the same thing as children. We grow up and we lessons learned from our parents and family and people around us. And if those are good lessons, then we turn out good. And if not, the opposite. But unconscious selling is what happens when a person goes out and executes a tactic and they don't know why it worked or didn't work, right? Like they're like, oh, like that worked. They don't stop to consider why. Okay, why did that pitch work in this instance? Why did this person say no and tell me to go away here? So the idea is to be very curious about sales. And that's kind of how I kind of got into more of the science of sales. This idea that, okay, when I pitched it like this, they got it. Or when this company I saw got acquired for like, $2 billion, even though they had kind of no product and no customer, like, why did that happen? Like, what was the promise? So I learned that everything kind of comes back down to the emotional connection that customers have with your solution and how they react, emotionally to your pitch, your tactic, and your approach. So that's kind of where the science of selling came from. The problem is that for most of us as buyers, which we all are, we're not conscious of the pathways by which we make these decisions. Our brain plays tricks on us, essentially.
Yes. So with that now, we want to look at some ways that we can fix this, right? We understand that there's a problem, that sellers are selling old school ways using stuff from when we were probably not existing. And then now there's a scientific way to fix that. How do we go about doing that? Or what's the first step? If you're a sales rep listening to this, what should she or he do in starting to fix it? Besides, so we acknowledge we have a problem, like AA. I acknowledge I have a problem, David. What can I
Yeah.
do now?
Well, the good thing is a lot of these tactics and approaches, I mean, we talk about science, but you don't have to be a scientist to figure this stuff out. It's very, very easy to assimilate. So
Yeah,
I can give you kind of two quick examples.
sure.
When it comes to messaging, for example, someone says, what do you do? Donald, like, what is it that you do? We're like a deer in the headlights. It's like no one's ever asked us that question before in our company. Yeah. Something I joke, in the book, I say, when people used to ask my mother, like, what does David do? She's
Mhm.
like, I don't know, something with computers, I think, can you come fix my printer? Like, it would be like that kind of. So when someone asks you what you do, even if you're a B2B entrepreneur or even a founder, you're like, we have a platform to do, like, okay, you lost me. Like, no one cares about your stupid platform. So what people have done, they pivot more towards benefits. Oh, like what we do is we can help, increase your sales by 20% or whatever it is. So I'm like, okay, that's a little bit better. But what I always tell people to focus on, and there's lots of different tactics. There's no 100%, by the way. There's
Sure.
no works every time. I talk about enemies. So I say, like, pick an enemy. Who is the enemy of your product or solution? So for example, our third startup, if you asked me, what did you do? I would say, oh, we were a platform. Let's just pretend I was giving you like a crappy answer.
What do you
I
do,
would say, like,
David?
we have a platform that helps people get more feedback, coaching, and recognition at work. And now you might say, oh, okay, like, I guess that's good. Like, it's better than not having feedback and coaching. But when we actually drill down to it, we actually figured out, well, what is it that people are struggling with at work? They want to get this thing, but how are they getting feedback and coaching today? We heard that people were using this thing called the annual performance review, which is like a once a year time where, like, I tell you how you're doing and give you all this feedback. And we learned that people actually hate that. They hate performance reviews. So we led with this message of people love feedback, but they hate performance reviews, right?
Yeah.
People love to buy things, but they hate talking to salespeople. Men love to dress well, but they hate to, Donald,
To go shopping.
go shopping. There you go. I thought you were going to leave me hanging. Go shopping, right? And so, like, these are like very simple things. When you ask me what I do, it doesn't matter what the platform is. It doesn't matter how I do it. The whole purpose of answering that question is to get you to lean in and say, tell me, I want to learn more about this, right? Like, that's why on my website it says, do you ever wonder why you don't like talking to salespeople? My website is geared towards salespeople. Why would I say that?
Yeah.
I don't hate salespeople, but I know that people don't like talking to them, and I'm willing to bet that salespeople themselves don't like talking to them. And now you're leaning in and you're saying, well, how does a sales trainer who trains people, who realizes they don't like talking to salespeople, what does that person do?
Yeah.
And then they leave. So that's a really simple science-based way. You don't need to know the science behind it, although I'm now you do. People
Yeah.
respond emotionally. Super simple way of connecting with your audience with science.
And I think the best marketers in the world understand that, but still yet when you give them the idea of now tell that to a salesperson, that's when they come, well, I have to write out a script for the salesperson and they have to give them all of this stuff about the benefits. Like, no, use just how you discover the problem for the buyers. Let's use that same idea for the sales reps so they can focus on the emotions. And it's amazing how that happens, because I was going to hit you up on that, talking about the enemy. Who is your real enemy, or who is the enemy? You talk about that in chapter, I think it was chapter 5. You talked about that
On
in the book.
messaging, yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
identifying that real enemy. I want to talk about this. Go back up to chapter 4. You mentioned don't sell solutions, but the idea of selling the problem. And I think those two tie together. Do you mind speaking to this for a little bit? You gave some examples underneath
Yeah.
that.
Well, here's the thing, like, human beings don't walk around every day thinking about all the spectrum of solutions and things that they could potentially do to make themselves better.
Yeah.
They do walk around thinking about themselves and the problems that they're experiencing. So I walk around thinking, like, I want six-pack abs and I want to get, like, I got to lose a few pounds here being in quarantine. Like, that's what I might be thinking about. But I'm not thinking about, like, the latest exercise, revolution or a video or something like that. And so when someone hits me with, like, we can help you exercise 20% faster, I'm like, I'm not even consciously thinking about, do I even need exercise?
Yeah.
But if I hit you with this message of, tons of people are now emerging from quarantine, frustrated, their eating habits are all messed up. They feel like they should be better. They should be trying all these things, but they're just super struggling. And diet, exercise, it's just not working for them.
Yeah.
This is where I can help you. Now you don't even know what I'm selling, right? But
Oh,
now I'm speaking to like the pain, the problem that you're experiencing. So don't lead with the solution, lead with the problem. And there's lots of things you can do. And that's an example.
yeah.
There's lots of things you can do to make that problem create more contrast around that problem using data. So I talk about that in the book as well.
Yeah, because I think data becomes that trustworthy um, number, right? Because now that you've backed it up, and especially if it's something a data that I source that I might be more that I hold as credible, maybe industry data especially, then that makes it a little better. Like if I'm in the paper industry and you tell me some stats about paper from a huge resource that I prefer, you probably could guess in the paper industry, which ones are the best ones, then that makes it, well, I need to pay attention to this guy. He just told me about a problem that I'm having and he backed it up with data. Is that the way our situation is? I need to learn more, and it opened the gate for the conversation.
That's right. Well, this speaks to a challenge which you kind of touched on, which is like most people don't realize how bad the problem they're experiencing is. So I might say, I might say, hey, look, I got a problem. I need to lose a few pounds because I've been in quarantine and not eating well. But you might say, yeah. And in fact, most middle-aged men who are unable to do, even 10 push-ups find like their chance of having a heart attack is actually increased by 80%. I actually talk about this, a relevant kind of statistic like that in my book, just to kind of drive home the point that like you may not have been thinking about that before, right? But if I can bring something relevant now, all of a sudden you are.
We call that the blindside challenge in our organization. Like, what is our client? Blindside. You can watch American football, or
Yeah.
you guys know football.
We have our own Canadian football here.
Excuse me.
We have 3 downs, so it's a little bit more difficult than your 4 downs. But yeah.
We're more talented. We can get down the field 100 yards in 3.
Right.
No, but the blindside challenge, that if you're a quarterback there and you got their blindside all open, you need to protect that. But it's for many businesses, like you're saying in this situation, when you said that, even though may not necessarily find myself in, this was a role play or just this example scenario, I started to think about that. I'm like, crap, am I okay? By you sharing that stat? Because now it's something that I never thought about. I'm like, if I focus my peer view of me running, I run and I eat decent, but this whole thing that you just brought up, the stat, was not something I would think about, and that could creep up and attack me. Thus the blindside challenge. And many organizations have those.
Tons. Well, in fact, a lot of my clients, all my clients are mostly in kind of B2B technology, and a lot are in IT security and disaster recovery, these kinds of things. These kinds of things can sometimes feel like they're nice to have. It's like, oh, I'm good with disaster recovery. I have all this stuff in place. And, some of the things that we talk about with my clients is them going out to their customers and saying, did you know that this recent study in Harvard Business said that 80% of CIOs who said that their IT infrastructure was secure had a data breach within 6 months? Right. And so now you're thinking to yourself, oh, I thought my thing was, and in fact, there's a lot of technology solutions that are geared around compliance, like helping you with, your legal, your tax things, or your bookkeeping even. And it's very easy for buyers to say, no, I'm good. Like I'm good. I don't need that. Right.
Yeah.
But the sellers are sitting there thinking they don't even know how bad they are. They don't even know how out of compliance they are, right? How exposed they are. Like if you had a disaster or you were sued or you had a data breach, how long would it take you to recover from that? Like if you can't answer that question, you are exposed. And so again, these are just some examples of where you're kind of bringing, to your point, the blind side.
Yeah.
I sometimes refer to these as kind of the unknown, unspoken. Customers don't even know to ask about them because it's not even top of mind. That's where you get a lot of power as a salesperson.
Oh man. And again, so go back to from the very top of the interview. If I'm sending out the same blanketed email, we offer IT services and it's cheaper than most of the companies. There's absolutely no way I want to talk to that person. But if the doctor comes to me and tells me that, Donald, you need to do this, the doctor seller, then I'm like, holy crap, I need to have a conversation with her because she just told me something that it might be detrimental to our organization. And being in Florida, you better get that IT, because if you don't have your stuff set up properly, God bless you when that hurricane comes.
Look, I'm not saying we should fearmonger. I want to be clear. It's not like
no.
Don't let this happen to you kind of a thing. But you're right. As a seller, you should be the doctor. And the doctor comes from a position of credibility. Look, in everyday society, you go to the doctor and you're like, Doc, my arm's hurting me. that doctor is allowed to ask you all sorts of very personal, intimate questions that you answer truthfully and immediately, because that's the nature of the relationship, and they're someone who can help you. But in sales, we don't enjoy that. So there's a lot to be made of the science of self-disclosure, how to get people to open up.
So I'm putting this all out there because now I'm gonna get all these emails on LinkedIn now and messages on LinkedIn, I should say, about, internet service. Since we're putting some new stuff in our office, one of the things that we're doing is internet services. And we go through, if you speak to one person about the requirements, you speak to all of them about the requirements, because it's the same exact thing. How many people in the office? What's the square footage of the office? What are you going to need it for? So I get impatient. My wife saw me on the phone and she was like doing this with this. Because I was getting so annoyed. I'm like, I don't want to answer all these questions again. I can tell you exactly what it is. So how do we do that? If I go to the doc, I can talk to the doc. And again, I'm more willing to do that. But in the discovery, I feel that's a place, that initial call sometimes that salespeople have, where the buyer initially goes on the defense. How do you Cobra Kai this? Now, how do we come to a situation where I could help the buyer quickly diffuse? We're not talking about the cold outreach. We're having a conversation now. What do I say to make them realize that I need to get pertinent information from them? Am I making any sense at all?
Yeah. No. So one of the tactics I teach is this idea of what I refer to as priming. So if you want to get someone to open up about something that they may be, let's say, reserved about telling you, because you're the enemy, right? You're in sales, you're the enemy. So they're reserved about telling you, or they don't even fully internalize. The idea is you can prime them with that notion. So here, I'll give you like a non-sales, but I actually do believe everything is sales, but I'll give you like an abstract example. Let's say I go to the personal trainer, I'm at the gym. And I'm there because I feel that my wife, who I've been married to for many years, doesn't find me desirable anymore. Is a fictitious story, Donald. I'm just telling you right now. So now I'm at the gym, and the trainer says, "Hey, buddy, so what can I do for you here? You're interested in some personal training." I'm probably not going to tell the trainer that, right?
Yeah.
I'll probably tell them something else, like, "Oh, I just wanted to lose a couple pounds, get into shape." But what if the trainer said, so think about this in the science of self-disclosure, what would it take for you to open up to the trainer and tell the trainer that very intimate personal thing? The trainer could, for example, say, "Hey, I'm curious, buddy, like, what are you doing here at the gym? And what do you need personal training?" The reason I ask is because I often see middle-aged guys like you at the gym, and it's usually one of a few reasons. Sometimes they're trying to doing something stupid, like run a marathon or an Ironman, something in their middle age. Or maybe their doctor said they got to step on a treadmill or they're going to have a heart attack. Or maybe, look, they're trying to get in shape for their partner. I see it all. What are you here for? Now, all of a sudden, I'm like, holy crap, like this person, like, it's almost like they read my mind, and they've kind of given me this menu of choice. So I all of a sudden trust them more. And if I've done a little bit of research, like maybe the guy or gal kind of suspects that I'm there for a particular reason, just as though, let's kind of pivot back. If, let's say, I'm in IT security and I'm calling you and you're the IT security salesman, I might be calling you because my company had a data breach and I'm going to get fired if it happens again, right? So now I'm going toe to toe with you. You're the seller. How are you going to get me to open up and say, "Oh yeah, are you worried about getting fired?" But that's why I'm there, right?
Yeah.
So you might start off with, "Hey, look, I work with all sorts of organizations, and some are just, they have good security. They're trying to get better. Some, look, they come to me because they had a data breach and things are kind of all over the place. And if that's you, that's okay, man. Like I work with people like you all the time. And now all of a sudden you might feel more comfortable with me in opening up."
Yeah. And especially if you name drop at that point, or you probably, large companies such as blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, well, crap. If they had those problems in the past, well, well, maybe you can have a conversation with me. Like,
Yeah.
we help Target. You probably heard about their stuff that happened. Now it's all public. We help them fix that stuff up real quick. So no matter what you're doing, we can fix that for you. What's going on?
But look, the way you just did it now, you did it very naturally, very matter-of-factly. And one of the challenges, it's great. Look, it's great for you to go in and sell a product when you've been working at that company for 10 or 15 years and you've seen everything. You have all this experience as a doctor. One of the biggest challenges in modern selling is what I refer to, and I talk about this in the book, I call it experience asymmetry. When you have a younger, less experienced seller calling on a more senior level decision maker buyer,
I had
whose
that.
job they've never done. Right? Like I had that. I was 25 when I first started in sales, and I'm in boardrooms with, big manufacturing companies and airlines, and they're making jokes about the fact that they have systems there that are older than I am, right? Like you need to be able to overcome that. It's a big problem in modern selling, is that experience asymmetry. So some of these tactics we spoke about, and I talk about it in the book as well, can help you overcome that balance.
David, if we go any further, we're going to have to not require people to go buy the book. I'm just kidding. This is great. Guys, I highly recommend you check it out. And look at the color. It's like David went ahead and took my marketing.
How about that,
Looks
eh?
good with all the stuff that we're doing. So I really love it. Sell the way you buy, modern approach to sales that actually works, even for you. So check out David. You can find all of his information in the comments down below, as well as you can find him on LinkedIn. But David, if there's one major piece of advice people are they need to walk away with one major thing from our interview and conversation today, what's that one major advice you'd give them?
Well, I hope this doesn't seem self-serving because this piece of advice predated the book. The piece of advice is sell the way you buy. Sell the way you buy. If there's an empathy piece, just don't do stuff that wouldn't work on you if you found yourself on the buying side, and be really curious about why you make the decisions you make, from where you go on vacation, the clothes you wear, what you ordered for lunch, to help unpack these pathways and mechanisms to make you a smarter seller. So just sell the way you buy.
You heard it, guys. Sell the way you buy. Thanks so much for coming on our show today, David. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, Donald. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for the book.
Pleasure.
That was David Primer, and if you want to connect with him, you can find the information down below. If you're watching this on TSE TV on YouTube, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, go ahead and just simply click on a link, and you will be able to go back to our website and to check out all the details there. You can also go to tsestudios.io/The Sales Evangelist, and you can get a chance to connect with our website there as well and learn some more information about our prospect. I'm sitting here talking about prospects, about our friends like David and so forth. I want you guys to succeed. We bring folks on like David because they bring real-world knowledge coupled with educational stuff that can help you to bring value to your buyers. We want you to be able to know what to say when you get in contact with the people you're trying to reach, and we want you to know how to close the deal. But most importantly, we want to challenge you each and every single day to go out and do big things. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video today. If you enjoyed the content, I ask you to go ahead and hit that like button, that thumbs up in the bottom right-hand corner. Also, to make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. This way, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest sales strategies, latest tools, and things that are going to help you to not only find more prospects, but to close more deals. Thanks so much.